Here's an interesting topic I wanted to mention because it's been making me really upset lately, and I feel like it should be talked about more. When I was a kid, growing up, uh, I was born right after 9/11, and but like before the invasion of Iraq, and like right after the invasion of Afghanistan, and so when I was growing up, if you met somebody who was a Muslim, it was always like mentioned with this air of like hostility or negativity, very Islamophobic. And that was a common theme throughout the 2000s that I would come to learn as I got older. That, like the FBI setting up disabled Muslim teenagers and trying to frame them as like terrorists so they could get like a big win during the war on terror, to make themselves look good. Like the Bush era government was so unbelievably corrupt. And people always forget about this because Trump blows them out of the water nowadays. But like back then, the CIA torture program, the FBI like pinning anti-Muslim terrorist sentiment on people, like it was like a rogue state, man. It was the Wild West. And like, with the Patriot Act and TSA and the Department of Homeland Security being created, this country, same thing. This country entered a dark period, and Islamophobia was at an all-time high. And it seemed like, going into the 2016 election, obviously the Syrian civil war was still going, and ISIS was had already kind of become a big problem because of our exit from Iraq and the blowback of our invasion of Iraq creating ISIS, and our involvement in the Syrian civil war contributing to that as well. Um, that was kind of going on. And so we had ISIS in the Middle East, and there were terrorist attacks throughout Europe, and threats of ones in the US, and, yada, yada, yada. You get the point. After all of that, and things had started to die down, it seems that Islamophobia, while still existing, kind of took a bit of a backseat. On a systemic level, it was still there. It's no coincidence that if you're Arab presenting, whether it be your name or your skin color, if you're Muslim presenting in any way, you will get pulled aside by TSA. You will get bomb swabbed. Sometimes you'll even get interrogated. It's no coincidence that that happens to you. That's by design. The system is designed to be that way, because it's deeply Islamophobic. The assumption is just that all terrorists will be Arabs or Muslims. That's like the assumption by the U.S. government and by a large swath of the American people, because white people in particular can't fathom a world where white people can be terrorists, or Europeans can be terrorists. White Europeans specifically, like, Carl Smith is not going to be in the eyes of a white person. They're not going to think of Carl Smith as being a terrorist, but like what we'll go over, someone named Abdul Al Sayed is seen as a terrorist style figure just because of his name. So, lately I've been thinking about this a lot because it's been ramping up a lot more recently. Like with Abdul Al Sayed running for Senate in Michigan, I've been seeing a lot of anti-Muslim attacks against him. Lots of attacks against his ethnicity, using his name to fearmonger. Mike Rogers is employing these disgusting attacks against El Sayed, by like emphasizing his name and basically pulling a Barack Hussein Obama move, where like you'll see Trump always mentions Obama's middle name, Hussein, and it's a fear tactic. It's supposed to be like, look at this foreign middle name. Or in Abdul's case, look at this foreign name. So scary. And it's really disheartening. It feels gross to see. And last year we even saw it when Cuomo kept employing racist Islamophobic attacks against Zoran Mamdani, and people are still doing that. It made me really upset when people were saying, and I don't usually get this way about these kinds of things because I'm kind of disillusioned by America and not that patriotic really, but when people were like, Mamdani shouldn't go to the 9/11 memorial event on this year's anniversary of 9/11, the 25th anniversary. I was like, why? They act like Mamdani was in the plane. They act like he was in the room while they were planning the 9/11 attacks. Like, what the fuck are we talking about? It's so gross. It's and when I see people of color repeating these same lines, dude, you don't see the irony here that 60 years ago they were saying the exact same type of shit about people of color. I mean, to say that the New York City mayor shouldn't attend a 9/11 memorial service simply because he's Muslim. I mean, talk about No Child Left Behind. Good God. How many people have been left behind? Just because he's a Muslim doesn't mean... Look, 9/11 didn't happen because Muslim. 9/11 isn't caused because the people doing it were Muslim. They happened to be Muslim, and the attack was caused primarily as a revenge plot. It was blowback. Our actions in the Middle East and our support of Israel and the Lebanon attacks where Israel was toppling entire buildings in Lebanon, and our occupation of the Middle East following the Afghanistan Civil War, that's the type of shit that led directly to the planning and execution of 9/11. It has nothing to do with, every Muslim should feel bad because a few radicalized Islamic extremists decided to carry out a deadly terrorist attack on the World Trade Center. Yeah, every Muslim should feel bad for that. That's ridiculous. That's like saying I should feel bad because of the guy that shot up that black church in South Carolina 10 years ago. It's like saying that. Like, I shouldn't feel bad for that because I'm not the one who did that attack. I feel bad for the victims, but I shouldn't feel guilty for that attack because I'm not a racist Confederate sympathizer like Nazi prick, and I didn't go into that church and do that. I've never thought about doing anything like that, and that's the case for millions of Muslims. That's not the they don't think about flying planes into buildings. Most Muslims just want to live in peace, just want to live their lives, practice their faith, worship who they want to worship, and the gall, the disgusting insinuation that Mayor Mamdani shouldn't attend the New York City 9/11 memorial event because he's Muslim. The insinuation of that, it's disgusting. And it blows me away that in today's day and age, Islamophobia is so normalized and so like signed off on by the general public. The fact that it's so acceptable. Have we not learned our lessons? Like, especially when I see liberals doing this. Republicans, I already know. Like, Republicans are still stuck on the whole why can't we say the N-word issue. Like, I don't expect any nuance out of them. It's when Democrats and liberals say shit like this. Like, cut a liberal and a fascist bleeds. Why are you guys playing into this? You clearly have enough intelligence to somewhat understand the issue of racism against black people, racism against Hispanic people, racism against Asian people. You clearly have some level of intelligence to understand why that's wrong, why it's wrong to generalize an entire group, an entire ethnic group, and clearly understand that not every person in an ethnic group is one certain way. just because one person from that ethnic group does something. You clearly understand that. So why does that same standard not applied for people who follow Islam? Why is that same standard not applied? And don't even get me started on the amount of atrocities that have been committed in the name of Christianity. And even with that, I still don't demonize Christians, because Christians are the exact same way as Muslims. They just want to worship who they want to worship. They want to practice their faith. Most Christians, I would hope at least, don't subscribe to the religious extremism that a lot of radical extremist Christians believe in. When members of the Bush administration say shit like, we're going to launch a crusade against the people who did the 9/11 attacks, and using religion as a justification for these invasions, or the recent administration, the Department of Defense, using quotes from Isaiah as as basically a justification for the invasion of Iran. You know, when these people do this kind of stuff, it's disgusting, it's wrong, but I'm not going to pin all that on everyday Christians. I'm not going to generalize Christians for that kind of issue. So why do we not apply that same standard to Muslims? When groups of Islamic extremists do stuff, why do we then pin it all on the entire religion and its followers? Why do we do that? And recently, like today or yesterday, I don't even know when it happened, Curtis Sliwa actually came out and defended Mamdani. And I want to show this clip. Because it is nice to see him actually stand up for Mamdani. It is nice to see, like, despite all of the things I disagree with Curtis on, like his stance on immigration and the fact that they like beat up a guy in New York on Fox News because they thought he was an immigrant. Like, all that stuff is horrible, but I'm glad that he at least tries to go to bat for the New York City mayor.
What is your thoughts on the criticism of him, especially because in a lot of these pieces, it's not anything he said, it's an idea of who he is.
Ridiculous. He's the mayor. Stop being sore losers. You knew this is Zoran Mandami. He was never a fake, phony, fraudulent fugazi like a lot of politicians. He told you who he was. Once he got elected, you should have known he was going to be there at 9/11. Now, if you choose to turn your back on him, I don't want to ever tell family members what they should be doing on this holiday. That's not holiday, but this solemn occasion. That's your choice. But I believe you respect the office. He's the mayor. He's representing the city. Unlike what my former friend, Sid Rosenberg, did with Cuomo, that I think stopped him dead in his tracks. I think it was 10 days before the election when they were joking around about what would happen if Mamdani were the mayor on the occasion of 9/11. You know, do you think that there'd be another 9/11? And Cuomo ended up laughing along with that shock jock. I think when you did internal polls, as we did, that really hurt him because he was gaining momentum.
That really was a turning point in the Cuomo campaign. That really was probably the moment that killed Cuomo's momentum, was when he was laughing on the radio with that fucking sleaze bag, laughing about how, oh yeah, if we had a Muslim mayor in New York City, he would do 9/11. Such a shitty thing to say. Also, Mamdani was in the state assembly before this. Why didn't he do it before? How would being the mayor give him the power to do 9/11 again? Like, I don't understand this logic. I had another power surge. I was cooking. I was saying this was also happening around the time, and I think this also damaged Cuomo's campaign, where you know, where that fucking senator from New York, Kirsten Gillibrand, came out and said something like Zoran was going to bring like Islamic jihad or something to New York City. Let me see if I can find that quote. Let me see. Where is it? Oh, come on. My internet's not back yet, but I can load a Reddit clip.
We're joking.
All right, here. Watch this Reddit clip while I Finish looking for this.
Around about what would happen if Mondami were the mayor on the occasion of 9/11. You know, do you think that there'd be another 9/11? And Cuomo ended up laughing along with that shock jock. I think when you did internal polls, as we did, that really hurt him because he was gaining more.
Fuck. I have to wait for my internet to come back. Yeah, I think it was Kirsten Gillibrand that said something like Mom Donnie's gonna bring jihad. I have to look it up on my phone. Read the quote. Sorry. Yeah, dude, the power surges today are crazy. That one shut my whole computer off, by the way. That one I had no choice in. So, like, the clip, the recording from before cuts off in, like, a really awkward spot. Oh, here we go. Yeah, Gillibrand apologizes to Mom Donnie. This was right after the primary, too. Damn, this was right after the New York City primary. Gillibrand apologizes to Mom Donnie over jihad comments. U.S. Senator Gillibrand falsely claimed in a radio interview that the presumptive Democratic nominee for mayor had made references to global jihad. This was also when people were like, oh, Mom Donnie said he's going to globalize the Antifada, which is hilarious because Antifada just means like revolution. I'm pretty sure they used to call the uprising of the Warsaw Ghetto the Warsaw Ghetto Antifada until like just a couple of years ago because people had demonized the term so bad that they felt the need to change the name of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising and like steer away from the word Antifada. It is really ridiculous. The demonization of words that are perceived as too Arab or too Islamic, like it's just so ridiculous. And this really does it really does piss me off when people employ Islamophobic tropes against Muslim people to try to discredit their ideas. If this
because he was gaining more.
Sliwa clip buffered more.
Internal polls as we did, that really hurt him because he was gaining momentum. Remember, don't vote for Sliwa, a vote for Sliwa is a vote for Mondami. He was gaining traction, and then he made that stupid remark, and then didn't handle it well, and then Zorhan exploited the hell out of it as he should. That was Islamophobic. He's the mayor. Get used to it.
Sliwa,
I love that he used the term Islamophobic. That really nails the coffin from Sliwa. Yeah, I like that he came out and said this. It makes me respect him just a bit. And I don't even think it's necessarily that he loves Mom Donnie. I know him and Mom Donnie have worked together a bit during this term. I think he's like named as like the night mayor of New York City, which is hilarious. But like the night shift mayor. But I think this relationship spawned from the fact that Sliwa hates Cuomo so much and respects Mom Donnie's like genuineness as a mayor, unlike the previous mayors, which are all corporate, like politicians. I think he just respects how down to earth Mom Donnie is and hates Cuomo that much. He's willing to bat for Mom Donnie. Like he hates the liberals, but skips all of that straight to liking a Democratic socialist just because he hates Cuomo and respects how real Mom Donnie is. But yeah, and all of this kind of reminded me of this old story. So Zoomers probably don't know much about this. I only know about this because of my mom caring about it at the time, because she was pretty on top of the news at the time. And back in a lot of my foundational political beliefs can be traced back to my mom, because my mom nowadays would probably identify as a leftist. I don't know if she'd go as far as me and call herself a socialist, but she's a pretty progressive leftist. But back in the day, she was probably more like a left-leaning liberal. But regardless, she was very on top of the news, and seemingly she knew what was going on. She was on top of things. She was monitoring the situation before I was ever able to. And so back in the day, I heard about this, but obviously I didn't know much until I was much older. back then, I think it was like around 2010 era, where there had been proposals to build what I understood to be them building a mosque near Ground Zero. And you can try to make the argument that it's in poor taste 9 years after 9/11 to propose building a mosque near Ground Zero. I would argue it's not. I would argue that it's actually very racist to imply that it is, because it goes back to that whole, argument that I made where not every Muslim wants to do 9/11. Just because Muslims happen to be the ones that carried out 9/11, that doesn't mean that all Muslims are responsible for 9/11. Doesn't mean that all Muslims should be punished and demonized simply for the fact that 9/11 was carried out by Muslims. It shouldn't be that way. I would say it's totally fine to build a mosque wherever the hell you want to build a mosque. And I was curious because I was looking at a map of New York, because there was polling that came out that showed that Mamdani has a very high favorability right now, 69%. Oh yeah. But that came out, and I was looking at a map of New York, and I thought to myself, you know what? Where was that mosque actually built at? Because I've never actually seen it, nor do I know where it is in New York City. It's not even at Ground Zero, dude. It's called Park 51. At least nowadays, that's what it's called. And it's not even like necessarily a mosque. I think it's part mosque, but it's like it's an Islamic community center is the way that it's described on Google. And it's essentially just a community center where really, I think they advertise it as really anybody of all faiths can go in there and just hang out. But that it's primarily a Muslim community center. And it's called Park 51. It's like 4 blocks away from Ground Zero. Let me, it's called the Ground Zero Mosque by a lot of people that remember it. But Park 51, if I can pull it up on a map without doxing myself, is not really near Ground Zero. Like, it's really not. And people got so up in arms about this. People were pissed about this shit. Here, let's see if, I hope it doesn't show where I live, but here, look at this. Oh yeah, maybe I shouldn't show this. How can I show this without doxing myself? Here, I'll put it over here so it doesn't show my recent searches. All right, there we go. This is perfect. It's not showing anything. Okay, so look. Here's a map of New York City. These are this is where the World Trade Center used to stand, and these are the memorial pools, and the new One World Trade Center, the Freedom Tower, is right here. It's right here, right next to it. Then, if you pop down a couple more traffic lights, about 3 traffic lights away-ish from the World Trade Center site is Park 51, which is right here. And it's just a building that's a community center. But look at how far away it is from the World Trade Center. You got to walk a pretty decent ways away from it. I know this whole plaza is technically the World Trade Center, like, hub. Like, this whole thing is the World Trade Center. But specifically where the Twin Towers were and the One World Trade Center building is, this thing's pretty far away. It's a decent little walk away from these areas. So first off, it's not even like that close. So that's like the first ridiculous thing that these people got up in arms about. But let's say even if they had put it like right here, which I think this is the World Trade Center Mall. Let's say they had just smacked it right in one of these like blocks here next to the memorial site. Who cares? Who cares? Seriously, who cares? Like, what the hell? I mean, my God. That's what I'm saying. Like, that's like you're basically giving the game away that you think Al Qaeda is all Muslims. You're giving the game away. Which I guess really makes it no surprise that these same people that claim that shit also think that Zionism is equivalent to all Judaism. So I guess, yeah, if they follow that logic, they're going to follow that logic too. Who cares if they build a mosque near ground zero? The whole outrage about that is rooted in Islamophobia, deep Islamophobia. It should not bother you that a Islamic community center is built close to ground zero. It shouldn't bother you at all. It shouldn't, because you shouldn't think that the 9/11 terrorist attacks, represent the feelings of all Muslims. You shouldn't think that. It's racist to generalize that. I know I've kind of gone on like a long 20-minute tangent about this, but this issue matters to me because if you're going to have an issue with anti-black racism, if you're going to have an issue with anti-Hispanic racism, especially with all of the ICE raids going on right now and the ICE killings, if you're going to take issues with those, you shouldn't then turn around and hypocritically generalize all Muslim communities, which I've seen that being done by specifically Democrats, especially because of this Michigan primary. How many liberals came out and were like, oh, scary Muslim man wants to be the senator of Michigan. What are we doing? What are we talking about? Why are we employing like Jim Crow era talking points against a Muslim man that wants to be the senator from Michigan? I don't understand that. It's gross. Islamophobia has generally gotten worse. It was really bad, and then it kind of died down a little bit, and then it ramped right back. What the hell is that? And then it ramped right back up, it ramped right back up when Israel started bombing Gaza, because people were like, "Look, Hamas represents all Muslim worldviews. Hamas represents the views of all Muslims." Thus, let's just start demonizing all Muslims because Hamas did October 7th. That's not how this works. And then people being like, look, people saying Hamas is like ISIS, that should be the best example to show you just how disconnected these people are. Because ISIS believes in a totally different set of values from Hamas. In fact, ISIS wanted to work with Hamas, and Hamas said no. Because Hamas's goal is resistance and liberation from Israeli occupation, while ISIS's goal is not that, at all. And just that alone, that's two different sets of goals, sets of values from two groups that if you asked a neoliberal Democrat, they would say they're one and the same and represent the views of all Muslims. That's what they would say. It's dangerous, it's gross, it's disgusting to generalize all Muslims like that. If you wouldn't do it about Jewish people, you shouldn't do it about Muslim people. If you wouldn't do it about black people or Hispanic people, you shouldn't do it about Muslims either. That should be your set of values. You should not be generalizing groups of people like that. You shouldn't. You shouldn't be generalizing ethnic groups. Anyway, that's the episode this week.